Chapter 13, the Renaissance and the Reformation. And so if we look at the chapter focus question, how did the Renaissance shape European art, thought, religion? And there's going to be 5 sections in this: Renaissance Italy, Renaissance in the North, Protestant Reformation, Reformation ideas spread, and the last section, the Scientific Revolution. So if we look at this very first section, the Renaissance in Italy, the focus question is, what were the ideals of the Renaissance, and how did Italian artists and writers reflect these ideals? And so the objectives are found over here: the characteristics, why it began in Italy, identify Renaissance artists, explain how new ideas affected the arts of the period, and then understand how writers at the time addressed these Renaissance themes. And so when we're looking at this new age that dawned, one of the first things that sticks out is Renaissance means rebirth. So the question is, rebirth of what? And what Renaissance writers and thinkers are turning to is they're turning to classical Greek and Roman thinkers, philosophers, writers, and that's what's being reborn, is this classical Greco-Roman culture. And so a lot of this is going to be the reintroduction of these ideas, especially with the Muslim world. So those things had already been there. So what was the Renaissance? It says right here, creativity and change in a great many areas. So Europe is going to be politically, socially, economically, culturally, religiously different after the Renaissance than it was before the Renaissance. A new world view evolves. And so we look at why is that happening. There's a awakened interest. And again, that's because Muslim scholars are reintroducing this into Europe, and that's going to spark all kinds of new thinking and questioning of the way things used to be, the way things are now, and the way things maybe should be in the future. There's also this spirit of adventure. We're starting to see Europeans becoming more curious of the world around them. And so we've talked about a number of things that factor in here. So for example, some of it is Marco Polo and the stories that he had. Some of it is the contact with the Muslim world. And Europeans are starting to wonder what else is out there. And then we also see the expressing of humanism. And so again, humanists are studying the classical culture of Greece and Rome, and that humanism and the study of humanities is forcing Europeans to kind of view things from a different lens, I guess, or a different perspective. So then the question becomes, why Italy? There's a couple of things that cause Italy to be the center of the Renaissance. One is its history. The fact that Italy, once upon a time, was the center of the Roman world. And so that kind of makes it the natural place for Roman and Greek culture to kind of be reborn. The other thing is geography, the trade routes. It's a wealthy place. And, you know, again, when you're talking about arts and entertainment and writing, there's a few factors that need to come together, and we'll talk about this in U.S. history too, is for leisure activities to exist or for art to exist, people have to have time and money to waste. If you don't have those two things, it's not really going to happen. And because of the trade of Italy, they're wealthy, and that allows them to begin to invest in these artists and these patrons. And so when we look at the vibrant city-states, they look at Florence as really the centerpiece of the rebirth, and the Medici family is going to play a key role in that, because the Medicis had accumulated a great deal of wealth, and they were interested in not only investing in local artists, but they wanted to invest in the city of Florence itself, and they wanted to make it a great place. And so there you go. It's this investment in not just resources, but in talent that make Florence the place. So when we look at Renaissance art flowering, they're reflecting of humanist thought. And so what these artists are doing is they're looking at classical Roman and Greek themes in terms of sculptures and artwork and stories and myths. and they're trying to figure out how can we recreate that. And so one of the things that happens is these new artistic techniques, the use of perspective, so being able to kind of create 3D images or at least give the illusion of depth, is going to make artwork much more interesting and vibrant. When you look at architecture for social art, again, what they're doing is they're looking at traditional Greek and Roman columns, arches, and domes, and they're attempting to recreate those. And you see that in the dome here. Brunelleschi is the one who was able to design this dome. You see this use of perspective in Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. And so these artists are all playing with these traditional Greek and Roman art techniques and creating something new and different. So you've got Leonardo da Vinci, who is the true Renaissance man. He could do a little bit of everything. You've got the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, all of his inventions. Michelangelo, again, when you look at probably, and again, this is, I guess, my own personal opinion, but when you look at the Pietà, there's many Pietas. It's that moment again where Mary holds Jesus' dead body after the crucifixion, and there's multiple depictions of that throughout the artistic world. Yet when someone says the Pietà, the one that comes to mind is Michelangelo's, because it's that powerful and it's that deep. And so when something that is that covered, and you think of just one thing that represents it, it's pretty impressive. And his other great work is the Sistine Chapel. It was a labor of love and hate, I guess, in some ways. Raphael, the School of Athens, and again, that's an interesting artwork in that he is bringing together Aristotle, Socrates with all of the Renaissance thinkers at the same time. So he's melding those two worlds in one artwork. And when we look at the writing, Castiglione's Ideal Quarter, again, what he does is he goes through and he kind of describes the ideal man, the ideal woman during the Renaissance period. And when we look at those, they may be sexist, they may be stereotypical, they may be counter our own modern views of men and women. And I'm not saying that he's right in his views, but what we can learn from him is what Renaissance people and thinkers believed men should be like and what they thought women should be like. So it tells us a little bit something about their society and their cultural values. Machiavelli, the prince, has a big impact on the upcoming rulers, because they look at this book, The Prince, and they look at this how to rule for dummies, I guess, in modern terms. I mean, if you were to go to the bookstore today, and if The Prince was written by a modern writer, it would be the How to Govern for Dummies. And this is Niccolo Machiavelli's view of what it takes to rule. It's better to be hated and feared than loved. Might makes right. And so he really outlines what it takes to be a successful ruler.